Jnanata sulabha muktir bhuktir yajnadi punyataha seyam sadhana sahasrair hari bhakti sudurlabha. Jnanata sulabha muktir bhuktir yajnadi punyataha seyam sadhana sahasrair hari bhakti sudurlabha. Prabhus? Jnanata sulabha mukti bhukti yajnadi punyata seyam sadhana sahasrair hari bhakti sudurlabha. Jnanata sulabha mukti bhukti yajnadi punyata seyam sadhana sahasrair hari bhakti sudurlabha. Jnanata sulabha mukti bhukti yajnadi punyata seyam sadhana sahasrair hari bhakti sudurlabha. Jnanata sulabha mukti bhukti yajnadi punyata seyam sadhana sahasrair hari bhakti sudurlabha. Jnanata sulabha mukti bhukti yajnadi punyata seyam sadhana sahasrair hari bhakti sudurlabha. Jnanata, by cultivation of knowledge. Sulabha, easily obtainable. Muktihi, liberation. Bhuktihi, sense enjoyment. Yagnadi, performance of sacrifices, etc. Punyata, and by performing pious activities. Sa, that. Yam, this. Sadhana sahasrai, execution of thousands of sacrifices. Hari bhakti, devotional service. Sudurlabha is very rare. Translation and purport by Srila Prabhupada. Srila Prabhupada ki jai. By cultivating philosophical knowledge, one can understand his spiritual position and thus be liberated, and by performing sacrifices and pious activities, one can achieve sense gratification in a higher planetary system. But the devotional service of the Lord is so rare that even by executing hundreds and thousands of such sacrifices, one cannot obtain it. Please repeat. By cultivating philosophical knowledge, one can understand his spiritual position and thus be liberated. And by performing sacrifices and pious activities, one can achieve sense gratification in a higher planetary system. But the devotional service of the Lord is so rare that even by executing hundreds and thousands of such sacrifices, one cannot obtain it. Purport. Prahlad Maharaj instructs, Matirna Krishne parataha svatova mitho bhipatyeta griha vratanam. From the Srimad Bhagavatam, Canto 7, Chapter 5, verse 30, and another verse which Prahlad Maharaj is also speaking from the Srimad Bhagavatam, Canto 7, Chapter 5, verse 32. Naisham matistavat urukraman grihim. So these two shlokas are to be discussed. Their purport is that one cannot obtain Krishna Bhakti or the devotional service of the Lord by official execution of the Vedic rituals. One has to approach a pure devotee. Narottama Das Thakur sings, Chadiya Vaishnava Seva Nishtara Payache Keva. Who has been elevated without rendering service to a pure Vaishnava? It is the statement of Prahlad Maharaj that unless one is able to accept the dust from the lotus feet of a pure Vaishnava, there is no possibility of his achieving the platform of devotional service. That is the secret. The above mentioned Tantra Vachana, quoted from the Bhakti Rasamrita Sindhu, is our perfect guidance in this connection. Om Ajnanatirmirandasya Jnananjana Shalakaya Chakshurunmilitam Yena Tasmai Shri Gurave Namaha. So, we'll discuss a few points from this translation and purport. So, this verse that we are discussing today, text 17 from chapter 8, has come from the nectar of devotion, the Bhakti Rasamrita Sindhu. And this verse is telling us that by cultivating knowledge, just philosophical knowledge, we can understand our spiritual position. So we can understand that we are jivas and there is Ishvara, that we are the eternal servants of the Supreme Lord. We can understand our spiritual position and get liberated, which means we can make it to the Vaikuntha planets or attain the 5 kinds of liberation, the Sarupya, Salokya, those 5 liberations that we can obtain by going to the Vaikuntha planets. We can get that far, and then also by performing sacrifices and pious activities, one can achieve sense gratification, which is called bhukti, in a higher planetary system. So these pious activities that one can do can be like giving food, shelter, accommodation, can be like digging wells, planting trees, humanitarian activities, like opening up schools and hospitals, for example, things like that. So by doing all of these pious activities, one can achieve sense gratification or bhukti. And this kind of sense gratification, like generally when we think of sense gratification, we think quite local actually. We think of just, having nice food to eat, having nice clothes, having a nice car, a nice house, all these things. So generally we think like this, and having lots of money. That's what we kind of think when we think sense gratification. But there is even higher sense gratification than that, which are things like flying in the air with the other beings that fly in the air, which are like jumping from one planet to another. And these are the kinds of sense gratification that the yogis, they tend to want. And also all these other kinds like prapti, which is being able to obtain whatever one wants in their hands immediately. And also appearing and disappearing at will, so from one place to another. So these are the kinds of sense gratification that actually can be achieved by lots of pious activities and penances and sacrifices. However, the devotional service of the Lord, so now we are talking about bhakti, loving, transcendental loving devotional service to the Lord is very, very rare, and it cannot be obtained even after doing hundreds and thousands of all these sacrifices. So it's a really interesting point to consider, because And it is actually it can become very confusing as to why we are doing all these things but still not achieving Krishna Bhakti or Krishna Prema. And it is explained here now in the purport, which is being quoted from the Srimad Bhagavatam, Canto 7, Chapter 5, verses 30 and 32. So these two verses are to be discussed. It is stated in the purport that we need to discuss these two verses. And the purport of these two verses, in a nutshell, is that, as I explained just a little while ago, that we cannot obtain Krishna Bhakti or the devotional service of the Lord by officially executing the Vedic rituals. Can somebody give me one example from the Krishna book of how just by doing all these ritualistic yagnas and that one cannot achieve Krishna Bhakti? Yes?
Is it the wives of
yes.
Brahmana that Krishna preaches that
Yep.
food and they give them when they preach the
Husband.
Brahmanas that
Yeah.
people they got
Yeah. So that's it. One time Krishna and Balaram were in the forest and they had gotten very hungry. So they went to the Brahmanas who were performing their fire sacrifices and asked them for food. But the Brahmanas were very intent on finishing their fire sacrifice and following all the rules and the rituals written down and just getting to the end of it. And they didn't give Krishna food, whereas their wives immediately gave Krishna food. So they got Krishna Bhakti, but the Brahmanas later on realized that they had made a mistake. So we cannot obtain devotional service of the Lord just by officially executing all the things written down in the Vedas. So this is the secret. The secret is that one has to approach a pure devotee. And not just approach, but take the dust of a pure devotee. And I will explain later what this means. So Narottam Das Thakur, he has said this, he said in one of his bhajans, he is singing this line that who has been elevated without rendering service to a pure Vaishnava. So if we just take a step back to present day and we look around us, then in our minds we will see, oh yes, this is a pure devotee, I feel this person is a pure devotee, I think this person might be a pure devotee. Like in our estimation, we can, we can observe and think like that. And then, if we're thinking like that, then we have to further think, what has made this person a pure devotee? And then if we are graced by the Lord's vision and the Lord's mercy, then we will be able to actually take it back down and realize that this person has received, is a good devotee because they are serving another pure devotee. So ultimately, everyone who we think is a pure devotee has come because they are serving other pure devotees. And this is the secret. This is what is meant by taking the dust. So, and it is stated here in this very line itself, who has been elevated without rendering service to a pure Vaishnava. So it is this serving a pure devotee which actually gives us Krishna Bhakti or transcendental loving devotional service to the Lord. So it is the statement of Prahlad Maharaj that unless one is able to accept the dust from the lotus feet of a pure Vaishnava, there is no possibility of his achieving the platform of devotional service. That is the secret. And so we are being told that take our guidance from this verse here, which is coming from the Nectar of Devotion and is now quoted in the Caitanya Caritamrita. So a few points to discuss more from this, just going into a little bit more detail, is that so there is much knowledge to be obtained by reading all the scriptures, and there are many scholars amongst us. But simply by reading and even understanding philosophically, we can make it to Vaikuntha, but not to Goloka Vrindavan. And by performing all the sacrifices and the pious activities, we will get sense gratification in a higher planetary system, even heaven, but we may not obtain devotional service. So this is how rare and how precious Hari Bhakti. Hari is another name of Krishna. This is how rare and precious transcendental loving devotional service, also known as Bhakti Yoga, is. That we will not get it even by executing hundreds and thousands of sacrifices. So some examples are like, sacrifices people used to do, like standing on one foot for months and months, or going without food for months and months, or going underwater and meditating there for many years. So, or sleeping on a hard surface, for example. So all these things, like all these different penances, sets one up to get sense gratification in a later life, to enjoy in a later life, but they don't give transcendental loving devotional service. And so the only way to achieve it is by serving the lotus feet of a devotee and by getting the dust of a pure devotee. So even in this bhajan that we just sung this morning before class, the last line is Ramachandra Sangha Mange Narottama Das. So Narottama Das, who has written this bhajan, he is always seeking the association of Ramachandra. And these devotees, and even the 6 Goswamis, they used to serve each other. They weren't puffed up thinking, oh, I am the devotee, the pure devotee who's got all these disciples and the others are just my servants. They weren't ever thinking like that. They were really busy serving each other, very humbly, genuinely. And, like going back to something I said earlier, and I said in our estimation, we can think that one, or we can observe that one is a pure devotee. But actually that is a bit dangerous, because we can't judge a book by its cover. So just by seeing like that, we can't tell. The scriptures say that we need to actually judge someone by how they are speaking, how they are acting, and what they are doing. So like that. So it is difficult to find a pure devotee. But for us, we are very blessed, because we have so many pure devotees in our spiritual line, and even amongst us today we have so many pure devotees who are walking, who may be hiding, we may be judging externally, but the way to find them is by seeking out what they are saying and what their activities are. And when we find such a devotee, we are meant to serve them. So what does it mean to take the dust? So I'll tell a funny story here. It's a story my Gurudev tells always in his classes, and he is telling it. He's actually laughing at himself as he's saying it. Anyway, I'll repeat that story. So he was telling us that when Prabhupada was on the planet and he was following Prabhupada on the beach in Juhu, walking on the beach behind him, and he would see the footsteps, the imprints on the sand, and he would actually pick up the sand and put it in his mouth. So he'd literally eat the dust. So this is Krishna consciousness, and the things written in the scriptures, they actually can be taken literally and also they're figuratively. So there are many, many levels to it. We know from other places in the scriptures that that there are 3 magic things. And these 3 magic things are the dust from the feet of a pure devotee, are the Mahaprasadam remnants from a pure devotee, and the Charnamrita, the water that has washed the feet of a pure devotee. So these 3 magic things, when you look at it externally, when you look at it from material viewpoint, then it seems rather yuck. It seems rather disgusting, right? Materially. But that's why spiritually we cannot, the spiritual standards and the spiritual goalposts are completely different from the material ones. It is really interesting. One may feel so qualified that, oh, I've got a great education, I've got a great job, nice house, nice car. all of that, and then you come to the temple and you feel like nothing. Because all of that doesn't count, actually. What counts is how much love we have for Krishna in our hearts and our mentality of humility. Because, so that funny story about taking the dust literally, yes, these three magic things, the Charanamrita, the Mahaprasadam remnants, and the dust from a feet of a pure devotee, this is like a big secret. If we actually partake of this in the right mood, just putting the dust on our feet, on our heads, taking a little bit in our mouth, sprinkling the water in our mouth and our heads, and also eating the remnants. By doing this, many devotees in the scriptures have achieved, for example, Narad Muni. He became Narad Muni by taking the Mahaprasadam remnants. So by doing this, we actually get on the, like, it's special mercy. We get a lot of spiritual credit and a lot of understanding internally. So that's one way. However, most of the time, taking the dust of the lotus feet of a pure devotee, what it actually means is not to chase them around and trip them over, take the dust from their feet, not like that. It actually means to serve them. It means to understand their mood and then to try to help them by helping them along in their service, and also by making their service a bit easier, by supporting them in their service, and to by serving them by also meditating on their qualities. Because by meditating on their qualities, this is another secret, it's magic. We actually get those qualities by meditating on their qualities. And then also by serving them, they give us blessings. And blessings of a pure devotee goes a long way. So to do all of this, we actually have to be humble. Because we can't do this if we are not humble. It will kill us if we are not humble and we are trying to, serve somebody else. So we actually have to try to find genuine humility in our heart. And it is not so difficult, because humility is one of the characteristics of the soul. Is actually one of the characteristics of the soul. So by giving us this false prestige, giving it all up, and forgetting how qualified we are materially, we can begin to serve these pure devotees. And also, there has to be two qualifications of these people who we serve, is that they should have served a pure devotee as well, firstly, and secondly, that they should be engaged in devotional service. So not just somebody who is looking like a pure devotee, like, looking very pure, wearing all the right clothes, and externally we cannot tell. We have to tell internally. One in the Bhagavad Gita, it says, one who is always thinking about Krishna, always speaking about Krishna, who has given their hearts to Krishna. This is one of the nutshell verses of the Bhagavad Gita. This is a pure devotee. This is who a pure devotee is. So spiritual nature isn't measured by anything material, and by all these things. So I'm going to list down a few things that by doing all of this we cannot achieve pure transcendental loving devotional service. So it is not possible by severe austerities, like eating only 1 grain of rice a day, for example. Not possible by that. It is not possible just by gorgeous worship of the deity. It is not possible by strictly following sannyas or grasta. It is not possible by Vedic study. It is not possible by submerging in water, exposing to fire or sunlight. It is not possible by personal efforts, nor by instructions of higher authorities. So all these things that we thought actually were going to give us loving devotional service of Krishna, all of this, they won't. And this is from the Caitanya Caritamrita, Adi-lila, chapter 22, verse 52. So it can become rather confusing if we think about it, that, I'm following like my rules of being a grahastha or being a sannyasi so strictly. I haven't fallen down once from following the rules and regulations of this ashram. But actually it won't give me transcendental loving devotional service. And interestingly, nor will gorgeous worship of the deity. Actually, interestingly, in the Srimad Bhagavatam, it is explained that one who only worships the deity but doesn't have much love and affection for the devotees of the Lord, they are called a neophyte. From the scriptural Shastra Chakshu, seeing from the eyes of scripture, they are called neophyte, if they don't have love and affection for other devotees, but are simply worshipping the deity. So by doing all of this, we cannot achieve transcendental loving devotional service. However, the only way to achieve it is by being blessed by the dust of a lotus feet of a pure devotee. It cannot be developed otherwise. So this is how important it is to serve the devotees. This is how important it is. And it's not like I've been saying, serve a pure devotee, because that is the way to achieve pure transcendental loving devotional service. But and I also said externally we cannot really tell unless we look through the eyes of scripture. So when we serve all devotees, regardless of where they are, we are being actually careful, and we are being also very intelligent, because by serving all devotees, we are giving them what they need at the right time in their spiritual lives. So then that comes to whether they are, at what level they are, and what we need to be actually, how we actually need to be serving them. And that goes back to, are they Kanishta Adhikari, Madhyam Adhikari, or Uttam Adhikari, like where they are. So according to that level, we serve them in that way. And this is important to be done. This is important to associate with them in the right way, so that we are and they are all helped in their spiritual lives. So the Lord gives, in this verse we are told that the Lord gives liberation and sense gratification quite easily, but not bhakti. Why doesn't He give bhakti that easily? The answer is because if He gives bhakti, he actually becomes controlled by that person. So this is how they are. And I mean, if we're thinking about controlling Krishna, that's really, really inconceivable if we're thinking about controlling Krishna. But Krishna is controlled by a pure devotee who loves Krishna and who Krishna can trust fully. So He doesn't give that easily. He doesn't give that easily at all. And bhakti is independent. So it's not even up to Krishna to give bhakti. Bhakti is actually independent. It can be gotten from the heart. We know the bhakti lata bij, the seed of bhakti, comes from the heart of another devotee. And it comes from hearing. So we are told, Bhagwan Bhagavate Kono Bhagavan Bhakti Lata Bij. That verse I can't remember, I can't recall it entirely now, but it is a very special soul, and they only get this seed of bhakti in their heart through the mercy of Guru and Krishna. Guru Krishna Prasade Pai Bhakti Lata Bij. So through the mercy of Guru and Krishna, they get this seed of bhakti in their heart. So we were told in this purport to discuss these two verses from the Srimad Bhagavatam. So I will quickly tell us what these two verses are saying, and it is on the same subject matter, and it is being told by Prahlad Maharaj. Prahlad Maharaj, who is one of the Mahajans, one of the 12 Mahajans. So Canto 7, Chapter 5, verse 30 is saying these things. That one whose only aim in life is to live comfortably in the material world, they cannot understand Krishna, because they are too attached to sense gratification and material opulence, and they are bewildered by such things. So because they have this attraction to material sense gratification, this fixed determination, the resolute determination to serve the Supreme Personality of Godhead doesn't happen. However, for those who are not bedazzled by material energy, they are called the realized souls, and they are under the protection of divine nature because they know the Supreme Personality of Godhead. So we are being told that by constantly trying to achieve comfort in the material world by adjusting this thing or adjusting that thing materially, we are chewing the chewed. We are doing what our ancestors have done and their ancestors have done, and so on. So instead to be, we need to realize that these material things we can adjust to a degree so that we are situated. Like, for example, we need to be sensible and use our intelligence, and if we are cold, we need to put on a jumper. Why so? So that we cannot shiver while we are chanting our rounds, so that we can maintain body and soul together, so that we don't get sick, so that we can do more service. So the aim needs to be there that I am keeping my body comfortable, and just comfortable enough, not over comfortable. Because otherwise that becomes sense gratification. That I am just keeping my body comfortable enough so that I can now do devotional service as best I can. So we need the Mahatmas. Mahatmas are the great souls, the pure devotees, or the Mahajanas. We have 12 Mahajanas in our spiritual culture, and these 12 Mahajanas, we can learn from them. We can try to follow their mood and try to speak about them and serve them in this way. So by getting the mercy of them and by following the instructions they have left, because they are not physically amongst us now, but by following the instructions they have left, they can train us up. And coming down now to real life, everyday life, we have our spiritual masters and we have Srila Prabhupada. So by following what they are saying, their instructions, we actually can be taking the dust of their lotus feet. So then text 32 is saying that unless devotees smear the dust on their bodies, they cannot achieve Krishna Bhakti. So this is one reason that you sometimes see devotees rolling around in the dust, in the dhams. When we go to Govardhan and Vrindavan, we sometimes see devotees behaving in what somebody who doesn't know would think is very silly or dangerous, like they're throwing dust at each other. They're having dust showers. They're rolling around in the dust. So externally it will seem very strange, but internally what they are doing is they are getting the blessings of all the devotees who have walked in that dust, of Krishna and Krishna's associates, Lord Chaitanya and his associates, who have performed so many pastimes in that dust. And by getting the dust, so like I said, you can do it literally, you can do it figuratively. So by literally getting the dust of so many devotees and the Lord, they are being promoted higher and higher back towards Godhead. So from a Mahatma or Mahajan, that is a devotee who is completely free from material contamination, we become more and more promoted spiritually. And as we become more Krishna conscious, the unwanted things, the anarthas, they go away. So we need to be taking shelter of a bona fide spiritual master, otherwise we have no chance of understanding Krishna. We can't get self-realized simply by academic education. We can only do so by the grace of Krishna. And there are many, many, many verses in the scriptures, in the Bhagavatam, the Upanishads, and the Bhagavad Gita, telling us more about how we can. There is one in the Bhagavad Gita, chapter 4, which says that by inquiring submissively and by rendering service to a pure soul, that's how we can get ahead in our spiritual life, make spiritual advancement. And this is from the Shveteshvara Upanishad, that only unto those great souls who have implicit faith in both the Lord and the spiritual master are all the imports of Vedic knowledge revealed. That and another one from the Mundaka Upanishad, that the Lord is obtained only by one who he himself chooses to reveal himself to. To such a person he manifests his own form. So, as I said before, who is a pure devotee? He is one or she is one who is serving other pure devotees or other devotees, and who is actively doing devotional service. So this is a person and who is free from all material contamination. So it is asking a lot. It's asking for implicit faith, which means no matter what happens, you know that Krishna and the spiritual master will have your back, no matter what happens. So this is implicit faith. Not getting a bit shaky about it and thinking, maybe if I do, not getting shaky about it. So if we have implicit faith like this, that they are the right people to take us back to Godhead, then all the purports, all the actual things that we are meant to be doing and following in our spiritual life, the imports of Vedic knowledge is revealed to us. And by doing this, by serving the devotees and by taking the dust off their feet, we can actually get Krishna Bhakti, which is extremely rare. So we are very lucky, very, very lucky that we know these things, that the scriptures are revealing these things to us. And we know this through the mercy of our spiritual masters and Srila Prabhupada. So, it shouldn't be taken for granted. This is what human life is for. It's not for accumulating and becoming comfortable in the material world, but it's actually to perform Krishna Bhakti and to go back to our eternal home. Okay, I will stop here. Are there any further points that anyone would like to raise? Any questions or any comments? Yes, Prabhu? Oh.
You mentioned
sorry.
Bhakti cannot be gotten, Bhakti cannot be attained by effort. So,
Yeah.
How do we get? Is it luck that someone gets Bhakti and someone doesn't? It's got to be given by somebody else. How does that work?
So it's saying that that it is not only by personal endeavor and not only by reading the scriptures, but doing those things, but also actively serving pure devotees, and therefore getting the mercy, getting the Bhakti Lata Bij by serving the devotees, in addition to our personal efforts.
How does an outside person go about that? They don't have any knowledge.
So how we can for an outside person, simply by eating Krishna Prasadam, simply by hearing the holy name of the Lord, simply by utilizing whatever assets and Lakshmi they have through the mercy of a devotee, because the merciful devotees go out and do Sankirtan, the merciful devotees distribute Prasadam, and the merciful devotees try to honestly engage another's assets in Krishna Bhakti. So by doing this is Agyata Sukriti. They are unknowingly getting, already performing devotional service. And for somebody who knows, like people who are already on the path, it doesn't mean that we don't make the personal endeavor to perform our sadhana and all the spiritual practices. We do all of that, and we do it very nicely with the hope of achieving Krishna's mercy. But at the same time, if we neglect to serve devotees, then this Hari Bhakti might not come. Would you like to add anything to that? Okay. Maharaj, would you like to add anything to that? No. Prabhu, you had a question.
We could, according to this, we could say, okay, we just serve the pure devotees. Why all this?
Yeah.
Why then do we have to come and worship the deity and pilgrimage and follow his ashram? We could just, wait, serve the pure devotees and they're here.
Sure. So that's right. So, however, what does it actually mean to serve a pure devotee? It actually means to follow what they are saying. It means to follow their instructions. And the instructions of the pure devotees are to chant 16 rounds every day, are to serve the deity, are to serve other devotees. So the instructions that the spiritual master that Srila Prabhupada and the 6 Goswamis and Lord Chaitanya that they have left us are actually to follow. So we need to follow those things. So following those things, what they have said is basically serving their lotus feet, because as we know there is Vani Seva and Vapu Seva. So Vapu Seva, we serve their personal form, but that is limited and temporary and only until they are present on the planet. And they are not so many, like these 6 Goswamis, they are only present in their books and their instructions to us. And we can still serve them. This is the beauty, that it is not limited. Spiritual life is not limited by time and place. So we can still serve them by serving their instructions. And their instructions are basically to do active devotional service, which is follow the 4 principles: no meat, fish or eggs, no alcohol, tea or coffee, no gambling, no illicit sex, and chanting 16 rounds every day, worshipping the deity, doing all the other 9 processes of devotional service. So actively doing. These are the instructions that have been left. So this is what it actually means to serve a pure devotee, by following their instructions. Oh, yeah, you have a question?
You brought up the point of why Krishna doesn't so easily give bhakti, because he can be controlled by that bhakti, and I've heard that explanation before. I'm not aware of where it sort of originated from, and I do wonder about it, because when I consider this, some doubt arises in that why would Krishna be afraid or hesitant to give bhakti because of, I don't know, fear of being controlled by it, and he gets so much pleasure from that arrangement. And it seems unlikely that Krishna's ever done that, and then it's kind of come back as being lorded over by one who's actually been given bhakti. So yeah, I'm just wondering if you could perhaps, as much as you can, elaborate on that point.
Okay, so thank you for that. I actually didn't have time to look up, and I also wondered about that. I wish I could just get the quote. Where exactly is it there? So as to why Krishna, that quote, like that verse in particular. So I didn't have time to research that, but could I, Maharaj, would you like to please elaborate on that? Thank you very much.
The question is that Krishna reserves the right now to regard the stars. There's many verses like that, that one has to be the devotee, and he reserves the right to reveal himself, but also to, as far as bhakti, those are very high things. It's not so much a question of fear. I mean, I think the point was raised there. He's not afraid to be controlled. And the point was also correct. He's actually quite attracted to being under the control of his devotees. So it's a question of intimacy. It's a question of allowing someone to come into the inner circle and the mood of that inner circle. And so that is a very sweet, very tender mood between Krishna and his devotees on that intimate level of bhakti. So therefore, to bring someone who is not qualified would be a disturbance. To that mood. So Krishna doesn't give bhakti so easily because of the rasas, the mellows, and the relationships, and someone who's not ready, to come in that way. Then Krishna keeps them according to their position. So this is the understanding of why he doesn't give bhakti so easily. That is the question of rasa, of mellow. So therefore he reserves that right. give that bhakti.
Thank you very, very much, Maharaj. And even Lord Chaitanya Mahaprabhu, who is the most merciful incarnation, and the Caitanya Caritamrita is all about him. So even Lord Chaitanya, when he was performing the kirtan in Srivas Agan, in the garden of and in the house of Srivas at night time, even Lord Chaitanya, the most merciful incarnation, who is freely distributing this love of Godhead to us all, and actually these texts are building up to that. They're building up to that how Lord Chaitanya is now freely awarding this Krishna Bhakti to one and all, regardless of their qualification. So even Lord Chaitanya, though, at that point in time, they would lock the door. They would lock the door and not allow anyone who was not in the right mood to enter those kirtans. Because the explanation is given, as Maharaj said, same thing, that if somebody came who wasn't in the right mood, then they weren't so freely able to express their emotions and so freely able to just be who they were, and just freely able to mingle and without being misunderstood. So they wanted people who were all in the same mood to be at those kirtans. So and then eventually, and then we know that there was one time Lord Chaitanya didn't feel that he was able to express himself so freely, and then he asked Srivas, and then it was discovered that there was somebody in the house who wasn't meant to be there. So it is for that wonderful reason that Maharaj explained. Okay. Thank you very much for listening, everyone. Jai Srila Prabhupada.